Hello and welcome to an evening with, run by Beach Pride Events of ASI. We're here with Rainn Wilson and Shabnam Mogharabi. Also, we have a lot of student media with us. We have 22S Video, Magazine and Radio, as well as Dig Magazine and Daily 49er, and of course, ASI Communications. So thank you both so much for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you. A lot of the conversations on the stage today revolved around gratitude and being grateful for the things that we don't normally reflect on. And Rainn, I was reading a lot about some of the struggles you went through in New York as you were an aspiring actor, and a lot of the, to be quite frank, you talked about how you kind of were living in poverty at that time. And I want to know, when you reflect on that, are there any lessons you take away from that that you have gratitude for today, or you're grateful for?
Yeah, it's interesting. As one gets older, I find that the things I'm almost the most grateful for have been the struggles and the hardship that I've undergone. I remember one time I was doing a play, on my first Broadway play, and I was terrible. I really sucked in this play, and I was all tense, and I was in my head, and kind of everything I knew about acting I was kind of forgetting, and it was a miserable experience. There's nothing worse than doing a play as an actor and sucking. But it was a grueling, horrible experience. But I came out on the other side and I said, I'm never going to do that again. I want to, as an actor, just be myself, bring myself to the role, not trying to please anybody else, do it for me. And I really feel like I never would have gotten the role of Dwight if I hadn't bombed in this play on Broadway. Mm-hmm. So I'm really grateful for that kind of horrific experience because it opened a lot of doors for me.
It's really hard to know that in the moment, to find something to be grateful for in the moment. I think it sometimes takes a little bit of time. So I think the hard work is in the moment when it's really hard to find something that gives you a little bit of hope.
And that actually flows really well because when you're in that moment, Rainn, you talked about this, but I'm sure you have a ton to add. So I want to hear from you first about the idea that when you're at a kind of a turning point in your life, and you could be delusional about your hopes and dreams, or you could be totally right. Like you could just need a little motivation to just go that extra mile, or you could be sort of how do I put this? Like something could be totally out of reach and you just need a mentor to put you there, or it could actually be out of reach. And I'm wondering, like, when you're in that moment, it's tough to see the forest through the trees. So do you have any methods for kind of rising above that moment and thinking, no, this really is something that's attainable?
Yeah, I think in the early days of Soul Pancake, we could feel the energy of feeling like we were living the purpose of what we were trying to do. And we weren't sleeping and we weren't eating and we were working around the clock and we weren't being paid and we were exhausted, but we still felt so alive and so enthusiastic about what we were doing. And we really believed in it. And I do think that sometimes in the world of entrepreneurism, it's the sheer willpower to want to will something into existence that can drive you, especially in the early days. It doesn't mean you don't have to figure out a business model and find partners and be able to grow. But it's that sheer willpower, I think, that sometimes can just drive you. And I think it's trusting your gut. And if your gut's telling you this is it, then put your heart into it. And if it doesn't work out, it just means you've learned something and can apply it to the next time that your gut gets lit up and on fire.
And for the viewers who don't know, she was mentioning Soul Pancake, which is a media production company, a digital media company that she and I founded together that chews on life's big questions and makes stuff that matters, inspires and uplifts audiences. And it's been around for 10 years now. That's what we were here discussing in the LBC tonight.
And great point about you say you make stuff that matters. That's actually, I think that's your slogan, right? Of Soul Pancake.
We make stuff that matters.
Right, yeah. You do. And so I want to know what stuff does matter.
Well, we try real hard to look at issues and then address them in a different way than maybe they're being addressed in the media currently. So, for instance, one of the topics that we care most about is young people undergoing tremendous loneliness, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation. So we recently teamed up with Funny or Die, and we made a documentary called Laughing Matters that looks at the intersection of comedy and mental health, and interviewed myself, a lot of other stand-up comedians and stuff like that about struggles that they've had with mental health. So it's a really funny documentary because they're very funny people being interviewed, but it's also kind of dreadfully serious and allows young people to recognize themselves in the stories of some of their favorite comic figures.
and you've worked with a lot of amazing comic figures. Obviously, there's Steve Carell, Ed Helms, Tim Allen in Galaxy Quest. Huge fan, by the way. And I wanted to know, is there anything that you took away from any of those experiences working with those big names on a professional or personal level that you still hold with you today?
Wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked that one before. That's a terrific question. I will say that from Steve Carell, I really learned what leadership was. He was a very quiet leader. You know, he really led by example. And he also comes from the Second City improv background where it's always like yes and. And so he really would incorporate that into his acting all the time. So no matter what you threw at him, no matter what crazy stuff you might do, he would just transform it and turn it into comic gold. So I learned to kind of really loosen up as an actor and listen and just be able to transform things and play a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to talk a little bit more about Soul Pancake one more time. A lot of the other conversations on the stage were about the Baha'i faith, which is a really interesting concept in and of itself, and we could spend hours talking about it, I'm sure. But it definitely seems very heavily tied into the vision and the mission statement of Soul Pancake. Can you talk a little bit about that connection between your personal values as a member of the Baha'i faith and what both of you see as how Soul Pancake fits into the world?
So Soul Pancake is not a Baha'i company, but it was inspired by three principles in the Baha'i faith. So one was the idea of independent investigation of the truth, in that we all are on this journey to kind of figure out what life is and ask these big questions and figure out what the truth is for ourselves. And so we wanted to make videos that allowed people to ask the big questions, but didn't necessarily give them answers, but just opened their minds to thinking about them. So that was one. The second one was the idea that art is akin to worship. So the idea that we could use art as a way to explore these big ideas, and that using storytelling and artistic mediums and creativity was a pathway to open the mind and the soul and the heart to bigger ideas. And the last was the idea of joy. That joy really gives us wings, and joy can actually make our, in moments of kind of difficulty and struggle, that joy actually can give us clarity in a way. And so we wanted to infuse everything we did with a sense of inspiration and joy and hope. And so I think those three principles really is what would informed and shaped how we thought about bringing Soul Pancake and the ideas of Soul Pancake to life.
Well said.
Oh, thank you, Rainn.
I've got nothing to add.
Perfect. So we have a question here from 22S Magazine, and they want to know.
And there's a 22S logo. We can push in there. Yep.
So this one's for Rainn. They want to know, how does it feel knowing that so many people have grown up watching you star in The Office?
I will say it's a little bit strange being in the middle of this Office renaissance, because we started The Office and everyone thought we would fail because everyone was like, oh, we love the English Office and you guys suck and you're not as funny. And then all of a sudden we started to take off, and then season 2 we won the Emmy, and season 3 and 4 we did pretty well. Season 5 we were kind of hanging in there. And then the last couple seasons, you know, our audiences waned, as they often do for shows, and a lot of less people were watching TV on networks at that time. That was the beginning of the streaming and audiences losing audiences. And then we kind of all thought, oh, we're done. You know, some people will watch Office on reruns, and we made a great thing and stuff. And then all of a sudden, all of these like 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds are like, you're that guy from The Office. And then it's really swept the nation. Even Billie Eilish is a huge Office fan. We did this video together. She's seen the entire series like 13 times now, and kids will just watch it over and over again. So it's pretty strange being more famous now for the show than when I was in it originally, you know, in 2006 or 7 or 8 or 9, which is it's trippy. It's trippy.
And so how does coming from that background as an actor affect your working relationship?
So how does my acting influence like our working relationship?
Does it
He's
propose
really
any
hard
benefits?
to get a
or-
hold of. That's how it affects our working relationship.
I'm busy a lot, and how it really affects it is I don't want to put in the work, but I want to get all the glory. So she's done all the work, and then I get all the attention for what we've done at Soul Pancake. Isn't that right?
It's my pleasure, Rainn.
Aw.
There you
Thanks.
go. That's really nice. And that was from Dig Magazine, by the way, that question.
From
so
which
thank
one?
You. Dig Magazine.
There, from this one?
There you go.
Dig Magazine. Dig it, Dig. Dig this, Dig Magazine.
The Daily 49er wants to know.
Dig your way into Dig Magazine. The Daily 49er, right here. Boom.
They are.
Daily 49er in the house. Yeah.
And they want to know what made you want to come to campus to discuss Soul Pancake.
This is maybe my favorite thing to do in the world is to not necessarily to like plug Soul Pancake or sell Soul Pancake, but to talk about the issues that Soul Pancake is digging into, to talk to young people, especially college students. I really feel a great rapport with college students, and I feel like they're the future, and our planet is hurting, and this is turning on some minds and some hearts into some new ways of looking at things. What about you?
I completely agree. I was excited to come here. I love coming and talking to college campuses because if we don't start thinking about these big topics from now, then the future is screwed. So I like to raise the topics and raise the banner and say, hey, let's actually dig deep and think and remind ourselves that we're all in this together. We are more connected than we are different and separate. And if we don't remind ourselves of that every single day, then we're not going to solve all the big problems.
I also think that, there's a lot of focus on politics these days, and certainly social justice issues are super important. But if you take a big step back and you look at the most primal and elemental of human questions and problems and issues, you can have an even bigger perspective. So it's important to kind of like look through that lens sometimes.
Yeah, and we appreciate you giving us that perspective. That means a lot. And lastly, another last question from our media is 22S Video, and they want to know.
Boom.
There you go.
22 West, not 22 East. No, West is what we say. 22W in the house. Boom, boom, boom. 22 West, go.
Okay, so projects like Kid President, obviously, were huge on YouTube and reached so many people. And what specifically was the moment when you realized, wow, Soul Pancake is actually taking off?
Honestly, when the pep talk went viral, when the pep talk to the world went viral, that was the moment. We honestly didn't know if the whole video thing was going to work. We had spent 9 months making videos. People don't know that we had made weekly videos of Kid President for 6 months, and none of them had broken through. And then the pep talk went viral. And in the course of uploading it on a Thursday, and by Sunday, it was at 30 million views. And we were like, holy cow, this is crazy. And the following week, we started to get calls from everyone from the Today Show to the White House to brands all saying, we want to capture and work with this. And we suddenly realized, oh my God, we're onto something. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the moment where we realized it was something was going to happen.
Yeah. So kind of going to shift topics here, but we talked about it earlier. In an interview from 2011, you actually mentioned how young people especially appreciate the awkward moments, that kind of humor in the office. And so I just want to know, why do you think that is? Do you think it's something about our outlook on the world that's different than other generations? I mean, either of you could answer this because it applies, but why is that?
I don't know. I think young people have a great sense of humor these days. It's been really developed. My son is 15, and he's got the sharpest sense of humor, and he really knows what's funny. I think cartoons and animation are smarter and funnier, and that people have grown up on kind of a smarter, edgier humor. And the thing I'll never figure out is the workplace element. Like, we didn't think that our main audience would be kids from like 12 to 24. We thought it would be like people in their 40s and 50s who will go have annoying bosses and work in offices.
I will say my dad does that, and he can't watch the show. Like, he physically just can't watch it.
Yeah.
So I think that plays into it too.
Too close to home.
It's too close to home.
But
yeah.
so many young people have said, like, I want to work in an office just like Dunder Mifflin. It's like, no, you don't. Trust me.
But also, I think the awkwardness of life is super relatable. Mm-hmm. And I think that most youth and most college kids are like, that's actually how I feel every day, is I just feel really awkward moving through the world and figuring out who I am. And so I feel like it's super relatable to say, yeah, it's really awkward being a human. Mm-hmm. And it's way more authentic to say that you feel awkward than to put on a front like you're so smooth and, able to like navigate the world with all of the like, it's just not, it's relatable. It's relatable.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. It means a lot for you coming here, talking about Soul Pancake. Again, this has been an evening with Rainn Wilson and Shabnam Mogharabi. We appreciate you coming here. And you guys have any last remarks about anything? Or
it's an evening with ASI Communications, Dig Magazine, D 49ers, and 22 West Media. Thank you, LBC.
Go Beach!